SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDay SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East in for the vacationing rhino today. We're in the Element Wealth studio where we'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday, y'all, as Rhino would say. What's going up there, Will?
Oh, it was a busy day yesterday on Capitol Hill. A lot of things happening into the wee hours of the night.
Man.
NPR, PBS defunded.
Yep.
Clawbacks. Always love a good clawback.
Yeah.
We had SEC Media Days going on yesterday, so it was just a very busy news day.
It certainly was. So what we have is a measure that rescinded some previously appropriated funding. NPR, PBS, those receive funds through discretionary spending, which is appropriated on an annual basis. It's not; those are not statutory programs, meaning they just happen without any appropriations, such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
It's like every 2 years, right? Something like that?
No, well, they may do it. They may fund it for 2 years and do it on a 2-year cycle, but it still requires, the point is, action by Congress. It's got to be funded by Congress through an appropriations bill or bills. It's a little different than Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those big programs. They require no action by Congress. They're statutory, set in law, so funding just occurs in accordance with the law. So, yeah, you know, what kind of surprised me, almost a little disappointed, I think it's fair to say, Will, is that it took an awful lot of deliberation and time to pass a measure that claws back $9 billion. Now, I shared this yesterday, and some people may hear it again that were tuned in, and we appreciate that as always. That's like less than peanuts. When you consider a $7 trillion budget, we're talking about 0.14% of the budget. And the point is, which I support, that's great. This is $9 billion. I agree we shouldn't be spending money on, because it not only was NPR and PBS, but some of the foreign aid that the Doge team exposed that was insanity, honestly. But, man, it took 3 months to claw back $9 billion, 0.134%. That ain't nothing when you got a $2 trillion deficit. How in the world are we going to make any progress toward that? As you know, it went back and forth, House and Senate, and there was some $400 billion that has to do with some sort of AIDS funding that originally was in the bill and was removed. So it was $9.4 billion. It got reduced to $9 billion. It's headed to the president's desk, I believe, at this moment to become law. But again, it took some work to get $9 billion through.
Yeah.
Our interest tab every day is $3 billion. Think about that. $3 billion
every day?
Every day, just for interest. So that's 3 days of just interest. Not 3 days of spending, 3 days of interest. Just push this in your brain a little bit. Interest is $1 trillion a year. We spend $7 trillion. So our interest tab of $3 billion a day is 1/7 of daily spending. That's how insane this is.
Wow.
So hopefully we can get serious about some cutting that would truly be consequential to the budget. Because right now, again, I think that's good policy, and we shouldn't be funding these organizations, and we shouldn't be sending money to foreign countries that honestly never makes it to its intended purpose. All this was good policy, but it ain't but $9 billion, guys. And it took that much deliberation, fight, back and forth.
Lot.
Yeah. 3 months, I think they've been working on this or something for $9 billion.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can do better. Big news yesterday out of the administration that about the president personally, his health, has chronic venous insufficiency. I don't know that I've ever heard of that exactly. The president, of course, is 79, and he was diagnosed with this condition after an ultrasound of his legs. He doesn't have any complications from the condition, so before the crazy people on the left, he's sick, you can't do it. I mean, I don't want to hear all that junk, especially since they covered up for a person in Joe Biden who every time he made a public appearance demonstrated that he lacked cognitive acuity. So I don't want to hear anything about that.
Yeah. This
doesn't affect the president's ability to serve and discharge his function as the commander-in-chief. The complications one could have would be what is called deep vein thrombosis. An echocardiogram is used to make sure that it's not affecting any sort of circulatory structure, system, certainly not affecting his heart and function, and all that checked out okay. So that's good news. It's just this issue with his bottom part of his legs, and Rhino said he thought they'd probably just prescribe the compression socks to wear. That's usually what the treatment is for that. Chronic venous insufficiency, also known as CVI, affects 25 million adults in the United States. Didn't know that. And it occurs when the valves in the legs don't work correctly. It causes blood to pool, putting increased pressure on the veins, usually affects both legs. It can occur in just one. And so I think that's what the compression socks do, is just kind of help stimulate the blood flow through that area. It's not anything that you did or didn't do to cause it. It's just some people just contract it as part of their age, and that's according to Dr. John Higgins, a professor of cardiology at the University of Texas Health Center in Houston. Says women are at heightened risk compared to men, 2 to 1. Women, and the reason they say for that is pregnancy, as well as the effects of hormones, such as estrogen that many women take, and progesterone on the valves. Didn't know that. But that's what the esteemed Dr. John Higgins, the professor of cardiology, has to say.
How old is Trump?
79.
For 79, though, I mean, as far as health problems go, that ain't that bad.
No, absolutely true.
I got more issues with me, okay?
Exactly. And so before the left goes crazy on this, and I haven't seen too much out of that just as yet. Of course, as you can imagine, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt fielded questions about that. I thought she handled it deftly. They're looking for gotcha moments. You know how that stuff always is. But It sounds like this is not a big deal, and the president is certainly fit to continue to discharge his responsibilities as the commander-in-chief. So, not really worried about it. The White House gave an update on that yesterday, which they should. Yeah. They weren't trying to hide it. It wasn't like what was happening during the Biden.
Annual reports, doctor reports about the president. You remember that?
Yeah, dude.
Like, his annual health report is out, and
they still sort of do that, but it makes you question, especially when you have the White House doctor during the Biden administration. Oh yeah, he's sharp as a tack.
It used to be kind of funny because, like, I remember when Clinton was president, they'd release it and it'd be like, he needs to cut down on the Laffy Taffies, or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The other big news yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, about Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
That was a shocker.
Yeah, there's a lot of reaction to that out there in the media world. So tell the folks real quick what happened to Colbert.
The late night show, David Letterman, Stephen Colbert, going away.
Axed.
They're not just replacing him, they're canceling the whole thing. And there may be some politics behind that, although they say there's not. I
believe there is. We're stepping aside for a break. We're in the Element Wealth studio today. We got Chip Pickering, CEO of Encompass. He's coming on at 10:35.
For a flipping good time.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Little Pink Floyd. We're back in the Element Wealth studio. Back in my college days, living in the fraternity house. Of course, we didn't have CDs or really... We did have 8-track tape, but if you had a sound system, generally speaking, that you were fortunate enough to have in your room, you'd have a turntable, right?
Yeah.
Play LPs. And there was a class I used to like to sleep through because I just didn't feel like I was getting much out of that class. And it was back in those days, well, they didn't count off for absences.
Really?
Yeah. There was no... Some professors did. It was at the discretion of the professor. So there was a management class that I took that I just didn't feel... It wasn't grabbing me. I didn't feel like I was getting much value out of it. Because the professor, back in those days, at least this particular one... Now, there were really good professors that would go beyond the textbook. I can read the textbook. I don't want to sit in class for an hour and a half for him to read the textbook. So, being the rebel that I was, I went to like the first 3 or 4 classes and said, okay, I'm not going to show up. And you only had 2 components to your grade, a midterm and a final. Well, my across-the-hall neighbor was in the class, and he'd get mad because it was an 8 o'clock class because I'd sleep through it, and he'd crank up Time by Pink Floyd and just blow it out, man, for me to go. So I'll share this story.
So you've woken up many a time to Time by Pink Floyd.
Oh my gosh. You'd hear the, what do you call the thing that keeps the time? Dun, 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 I can't remember. Metronome. Yeah, you hear that. I think that's what's in the song, if I'm not mistaken. But I did show up for the midterm, and I took the exam, and, of course, I showed up for the subsequent class. You didn't have online systems. You had to go to class, and they'd hand your paper back with your grade on it. And after the class, the professor cornered me, and, man, he gave me a hard time about not going to class. There you go.
Is that it?
Yeah. He cranked that thing up. My eyes were just playing open. Oh, man. And I was on the lower bunk in bunk beds, and I'd raise up, hit my head. Oh, man. And so this professor out in the hall, man, he just berated me about how I was wasting my parents' money and taxpayer money and all this stuff by not going to class. And I finally asked him, I said, well, I'm not going to say his name. He's not around there anymore. But I finally asked him, I said, well, how did I do on the exam? You know what he said? Well, you set the curve, but that doesn't matter. So I can set the curve without coming to your class. What does that tell you about your class? So, oh, man. But the Pink Floyd, I know I'm going way back and telling personal stories, but the Pink Floyd made me think about that song, which is kind of spooky time in it to itself.
Yeah,
but
on the way in this morning, I don't know why I was feeling Pink Floyd, but I put on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which takes like 28 minutes to get started. But, man, it's one of those where when your head is clear and you got the volume turned up really loud, it just sounds so different than everything else.
They were so innovative, if you think about it. That was 1973 is when they made that, by the way.
73, yeah.
Yeah. So, really incredible.
The Dark Side of the Moon?
Yes. I believe it was on the Dark Side of the Moon album. I believe that's right. I mean, that was kind of their iconic, right, release.
It's one of the best-selling albums of all time, and I think it may still hold the record for most consecutive weeks on the Billboard album charts.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was from like the year that it was released, 1973, until like, and it may still be on there until they stopped selling albums. That's how well it sold.
Well, what's really astonishing, that was their eighth album.
Yeah, I was
eighth.
I was playing some of their stuff the other day, and you know, same thing with like the Rolling Stones. It was like 7 albums before they had a hit.
That's exactly right. I mean? You're exactly right about that. They were kind of falling, I think, on the heels of the Fab Four, the Beatles.
It would change their sound. You listen to the Pink Floyd, especially. It's very weird and different. And then it became more, I guess, progressive rock. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's really hard to classify, to be honest with you. But the same thing with the Stones. You listen to the early Stones, and it's blues, and then they switch to, I don't know, we'll be kind of psychedelic for a little while, and then they go back to the blues rock, and then all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely true. While we're talking about music, I got to give a report. We had a couple of members of the house band on the program yesterday, Representatives Dan Eubanks and Joseph Tubb. We did practice, and I want to give a shout-out to Caleb Sailors from our news department. He was kind enough to come down to the Capitol. We took photos there in our new house band T-shirts on the Capitol steps. We had already been practicing, by the way. We got about halfway through the set, took a little break. We're practicing at the Trademark. We're in. There's actually a room that I didn't even know existed. It's kind of a conference room that is adjacent to their part of the big Trademark. And that's where we set up. It's carpeted. It's the correct size. The acoustics are pretty decent. So we took a little break and went and had our photos made there. Did a bunch of different shots, and Caleb Sailors was good enough to come down and
that could be your album cover.
It's pretty cool. We had a lot of fun. We kind of surprised ourselves. We sounded better than we thought. We had as you can expect, we had a couple of songs where there was some controversy on the way stuff should be arranged. And what we do is we're covering songs, obviously. So Representative Eubanks sticks his phone up to his microphone, and we play it. We're all like listening. Okay, see, I told you. We're having fun with it, though. Looking forward to playing at the Neshoba County Fair. Of course, we're going to be over there hosting the show. And I'm going to be hot-tailing it from the set there by Founder Square over to the stage at the track.
Yeah.
And we'll get it cranked up. Looking forward to that. Should be fun. No doubt about it. Some other legislation, Will, that went through is related to cryptocurrency. Two different measures. The Genius Act, that's another one of those acronyms that I don't know what it all stands for when you decode it. But this establishes a framework, if you will, for private companies to issue stable coins. And these are just cryptocurrencies that are tied to the dollar, essentially. And that's headed to the president for his signature, having passed through both chambers of Congress. The other, the Clarity Act. And that would be also a framework of crypto regulation. And then the Anti-Central Bank Digital Currency Surveillance State Act would prevent the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency. Now, the House passed that measure. It's in the Senate, and it's got to pass through the Senate before, and that will require bipartisan support. These are measures that require a supermajority to pass. This is a no-brainer. It's going to be interesting to see the votes on the anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. Are Democrats going to vote against that? Because they just, generally speaking, favor more government, more control. I think this is good legislation. I think it should pass, and I hope this would soothe the fears people have about the federal government issuing some sort of central bank digital currency. And I think the natural fear that is well-founded is the fact that the federal government would have essentially more information about your financial transactions, more than they already have, and that is objectionable to a lot of people, including me. And it's a shame, Will, because we, generally speaking, don't trust government.
Yeah.
And don't trust government's ability to secure that information. It ends up in the wrong hands and used against you. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back with Chip Pickering, CEO of Encompass. Stay with us.
From the Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
We are back with you in the Element Well studio. We are pleased to welcome now Chip Pickering, CEO of Encompass, former representative for Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. Chip, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Gerard, great to see you.
Glad it worked out. You could come in the studio today.
Always better in person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I read with interest the couple of articles that you penned, along with Robert D. Atkinson. This one, U.S. antitrust as an anti-competitiveness weapon. Absolutely. I mean, totally spot on. And what really intrigued me here, Chip, just a little background, is his discussion of Xerox and the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. As someone who spent a career in the IT business, I'm kind of a history buff on the IT industry. But the article points out most average people don't realize most of all this wonderful technology we enjoy today, that's where it was invented.
And if you read that article, it talks about how the antitrust action against Xerox, which was the world leader at the time in the technology of copying, which we don't – today we think, oh, that's old-fashioned, old tech. But at the time, it was really cutting edge.
Big time.
And antitrust American policy at that time restrained the leader in the global economy, and inadvertently, and the unintended consequence was that Japan became the world leader in copying technology.
That's exactly right.
And I think in today's AI revolution, transformation, and race with China, we're at the risk of doing the same thing, of giving China all the advantage as we cripple leading American technology companies, just as they have to build, scale, scope, making huge investments, just like they're doing in Madison County with AWS data centers. And what we're seeing this week in Pennsylvania with President Trump, what he did with Google and other major energy companies, $90 billion.
Unbelievable. He was with Senator McCormick.
Yes. And it was the largest investment in Pennsylvania history, just like the AWS investment was the largest in Mississippi's history.
Yeah.
The data centers, the energy, the fiber, the broadband, what I like to refer to as the full AI infrastructure is extremely capital intensive. And so if we're going to let AOC and Bernie Sanders and the socialist left align with some on the populist right to cripple American technology, as we're in this race with China, and I put it in the context. In World War II, we had the nuclear race, and we, in a very short period of time, built the Department of Energy laboratories that built the nuclear capabilities that allowed us to win World War II and then lead the world post-World War II. In the Cold War, we had the space race. And very quickly, we built from Houston to Stennis Center in Mississippi to Huntsville to Cape Canaveral, this space infrastructure that allowed us to land a man on the moon first.
Yeah.
But those were all of government federally funded initiatives to win those critical strategic races.
Yeah.
Today in the AI race, it is the private sector that is building the infrastructure that will allow us in our national security, our cybersecurity, our space, and our economy, and then all the benefits that will come from the different uses of the new technology and applications. That is primarily, overwhelmingly, private sector funded.
Yep.
And so,
unlike China, by the way.
That's right. And China is all of government, all in, building infrastructure, energy plants, nuclear plants, data centers, giving all the funding resources from both their private sector and their government to win the AI race.
Yeah.
So we can't be in conflict with ourselves to give the Europeans or the Chinese the advantage over our private sector technology initiative to win this critical race at this point in our history.
Yeah, and the president pointed out the other day at this conference, the summit that was conducted by Senator Dave McCormick of Pennsylvania, he accompanied him there, that he feels like that we still have a lead on China in the technology, but that we're lagging in the energy, which is necessary to advance the technology. And so he sort of called upon the nation to step it up to get more energy. I saw, you may have seen this as well, Chip, that Westinghouse, this is kind of a name you don't hear a lot about these days, although back in the 60s and 70s they were a prominent company. They are planning to build 10 new nuclear sites, right? Nuclear power sites.
It's amazing what they're doing on nuclear. And in my association in Compass is I never believed I would have a nuclear company join Encompass. Yeah. But because we have data centers and fiber network companies, and then all the leading from small tech to established tech companies on the model side, the one thing in their supply chain that they need is energy. So I now have the leading natural gas company, Williams Company, the leading new small modular nuclear reactor company, X Energy, which came out of Oak Ridge, did a major announcement with AWS in Northern Virginia. Join. We have a company out of that's an affiliate of a Louisiana company called Southwestern Power, building grids and transmission in the southwestern region of the country. And then we have a fusion nuclear company called Pacific Fusion.
Yeah.
All trying to work together between those who are deploying the models and building the models and those who are building the data centers and who desperately need the energy for this moment. And Mississippi has a rare opportunity. We have some of the best pipelines for natural gas coming through our state. We have 3 major utilities, Southern Company, Entergy, TVA.
Yeah.
We have Grand Gulf, the only nuclear plant in our region. And so we have all the components of being able to be an energy hub that will power the data centers and the economy. And this is what's exciting to me, Gerard. I think this first wave of investment of what you're seeing in Madison County and Meridian and outside of Vicksburg with all of the data centers, I-20 has become the AI alley of tens of billions of dollars of investment from Birmingham to Monroe.
Yeah.
Really centering at Jackson, Mississippi. The dark fiber routes that a company that's a member company of Encompass, Zayo, built that not only went from Atlanta to Dallas, but New Orleans to Chicago, but intersected at Jackson.
55 and 20.
Yep. And then Elon Musk locates his XAI super data center in Memphis. So you kind of see we're becoming the hub of AI, the alley of AI, which means that we're going to have to be an energy hub, a research hub. You and I talked on one of our earlier conversations about how Mississippi has more supercompute capability than any state in the South.
So true.
Mississippi State has the largest high-performance computer in the Southeastern Conference. We have the Army supercomputer at Vicksburg.
Big cray over there.
Navy supercomputer at Stennis.
50%
of DOD's supercompute capability is in Mississippi. And since we're the center of the South, and all of these applications and uses travel in fiber networks, which means they travel at the speed of light. We have the advantage of the speed of applying these new uses to what I think is coming next, which is going to be the reshoring of American manufacturing, and it's going to be strategic and advanced using robotics. And the great thing for Mississippi, if you can get the supply chains down the Mississippi River or the Tennessee Tom-Bigby or through the port of at Gulfport, the supply chain, the compute, the fiber, the data centers will allow us to really be a manufacturing hub, and that will be in biotechnology and chips, automotive, aerospace. So the next wave that's coming to Mississippi, and it can come to places like the Mississippi Delta, or to the Columbus Golden Triangle area, because they can get the raw materials into those ports, build the manufacturing of the future. And Mississippi's I've never been this excited about our future as I am right now. And the reason, our GDP was the second fastest percentage growth in the country this year. That's never happened in your lifetime, in my lifetime.
Never. Right.
And so all of the AI infrastructure and elements are in place, and the invaluable component of all of this is that we have the right leadership. Tate Reeves and Bill Cork are doing a tremendous job in recruiting and building the AI infrastructure and the energy strategy that we need. Senator Wicker, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, his committee is reporting out this week the National Defense Authorization Act. It will call for a range that will bring AI warfare training, all domain, so land, water, air, space. And we have a chance in Mississippi to provide that type of research and training on national security. UMC is going after a comprehensive cancer center. We have an opportunity to be a real leader in cancer research in the coming age. So I'm very bullish on where Mississippi is.
We got a break right now, but if you can hang around, I want you to talk about your concerns about this ruling from the Department of Justice on Google's breakup. Okay. Coming right back with Chip Pickering. Stay with us.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Some people say This town don't look good in snow. You don't care, I know. Ventura Highway in the sunshine, where the days are longer, the nights are stronger than moonshine.
I've been on the Ventura Highway.
But now we're on the AI highway. What did you call it, Mr. Pickering? You called it what do you call it? The what highway?
Oh, the AI alley.
The AI alley, yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
So between Birmingham and Monroe now, we've had Compass, the $10 billion data center commitment outside of Meridian. Mm-hmm. What I expect will be probably north of $20 billion by the time AWS builds everything in Madison County.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Meta, announced at 10, but I think it's
Meta is doing a huge data center
in Monroe
complex between Vicksburg and Monroe. Other big announcements are coming.
Yeah.
And so, again, I couldn't be more excited for Mississippi's future.
Well, as you know, the installation of that fiber along that route, it goes back about 25 years or so.
That's right. Most people don't realize WorldCom became the world's largest internet backbone company, not just nationally, but the largest in the world. Started in Brookhaven, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Comcast started in Tupelo, and then my hometown of Laurel, and it is the largest last-mile broadband company today globally in the world. Those things started here and then spread.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then we had Altel in Arkansas, right?
And so our history in wireless entrepreneurship and deployment and internet backbone, and the infrastructure of the internet age. Now I believe that we're going to be the regional leader in AI infrastructure, and very well positioned to grow and to prosper like no one in our lifetimes have seen.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. All right, so let's talk about this article that you wrote concerning the Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit against Google.
Yes.
Talk about that.
In a period of transformational technology, the last thing you need to do as a government is to intervene and stop the innovation as you build scale scope. But what AI is doing, it's allowing a lot of the companies in my association now that are the new entrants, the new technologies. General Catalyst is a large venture capital fund. What they're doing in energy and healthcare and defense technology is really mind-blowing. And they will disrupt the large tech companies, whether that is Amazon or Meta or Google. Search will become a very dispersed and competitive market because of the new technology. So the last thing you need to do, though, is to try to force an action which will stop all of that competition, large and small. And as we talked about earlier, you could inadvertently hand China the edge because we don't have the private ability to build the infrastructure like we're seeing Google and AWS and Meta and Microsoft and the large American technology companies doing today. But it's enabling all kinds of new entrants. And that's what I think sometimes antitrust gets so narrowly focused. They don't realize the damage they could do at a critical time in the emergence of a new technology and new markets and the global damage that can be done to the American economy, national security, and leadership.
Well, it kind of makes sense to me, antitrust action does, when you've got this really tight vertical integration where one company owns sort of soup to nuts, end to end, the entire supply chain. That's not the case here, and that rarely is the case in technology.
That's right. And technology is the market is no longer a local market or a national market. It truly is a global market.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the Chinese companies rise right now. And as they compete worldwide with our companies, again, it's very short-sighted. And I think that the Xerox example that we talked about earlier is a good example. We ended up handing that part of technology leadership to Japan at that time.
Sure did.
We were talking about the early browser.
Yeah,
and,
the browser wars.
By the time the antitrust actions were over, the world had changed, and a new entrant, came into being that didn't exist at 1998 and 2000. Google. So, you have these new entrants that appear that change everything, and I think that's what we're going to see in the competitive technology landscape today.
Well, I always think about before we go is how does society benefit from DOJ breaking up Google? I think it's just the opposite.
Well, and that's it. Our antitrust law is based on something called the Consumer Welfare Standard.
Okay,
and it's the consumer better today than it was yesterday.
Okay,
and I think it's clearly the answer that the consumer today, because of our technology companies, are better today than they were yesterday.
Unquestionably.
And the pricing, the innovation, the wide range of new uses and applications that will bring tremendous productivity into everyday lives, small businesses, mid-sized, large businesses, and to the overall economy.
Appreciate you coming in, Chip.
Yeah, that's the consumer welfare.
Appreciate it, man.
All
Thanks
right,
a lot.
Thank you, Gerard.
Fox News Super Talk News is next. Stay with us.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays, live from the Element Wealth Studio on this Friday, y'all. As Rhino would say, once again, we are in the Element Wealth Studio. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. 601-879-4395. That, of course, is the C Spire text line. Don't text and drive, please, folks. But send us a message if you'd like. We'll get to it. On the C Spire text line, someone is not happy about the defunding of PBS and NPR. Says, let's get rid of kids' shows that help them understand feelings, learn how to read, learn the alphabet and counting. That'll show those libs. This is nothing more than theater and does nothing for the real debt. Well, I certainly agree, as I said earlier, that this is a drop in the bucket. However, it is, as they say, a start. And I think on principle it's the right thing to do. Now, yesterday, I came across some of the content that clearly is biased. I don't think there's any question. In fact, I think it was the PBS head. We didn't share the video, but she actually made the assertion that the First Amendment is problematic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, the blonde lady there.
I think her name's Catherine Mayer.
That sounds right. But she got sort of caught and then tried to reverse it, right? Tried to backpedal it. And that didn't really go over very well. But I want to make this point, Will. See, anytime people object and complain about funding from government being eliminated for certain purposes, whether it's NPR and PBS or foreign aid or in implementing tighter controls on the way Medicaid enrollments are handled and the cost associated with that, or the ACA, food stamps, SNAP. I mean, you go down the list. Anytime you hear objections, there's always this exaggeration and assumption and argument made generally by those on the left who want to preserve that funding that tends to lean into, well, this is just necessary, and this is good, and this provides value and virtuous, just like this person did. Nobody is opposed to children learning how to read and learning the alphabet and basic math. In fact, I contend that it's the left that has sort of taken education and stripped it from its core goals of teaching those basic skills to children and more concerned about advancing ideological content such as gender ideology and race and climate change and the like.
Well, can I give you an example of kind of some hypocrisy going on here?
Yeah.
About 2 years ago, I don't know if you remember this, but Twitter, now X, decided to label NPR and PBS as quote, state-funded media or state-affiliated media. And what did they do when they got that label? So when you went to their main page there, it would say state-funded. On their Twitter account, it would say state-funded, state-affiliated media. They went into a big old tizzy. We get less than 1% of our $300 million annual budget from federally funded Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We don't get hardly anything. I mean, how could you call a state-affiliated media? I mean, it's so little, the amount. Contrast that with today, and it's, kids are going to perish in the streets.
Oh, my gosh. So I think what I'm arguing here and contending here is that nobody is opposed to children learning basic skills they should be learning and should be taught at young ages. It's really a question of, should the government be providing this funding? That's the issue here. Is this an appropriate function of government? And to your point, the vast majority of the funding that flows into those two networks is from private sources. In fact, it's their member stations that pay fees to the parent organization to be an affiliate. It's not from government. That's a small part. And if this is so important, then I would encourage the person on the text line here, open your wallet up and give them some money.
If it's so important, let's see you foot the bill. I'm going to read you some headlines that NPR wrote. This was in 2020. Quote, coronavirus and racism are dual public health emergencies. That's one that they wrote. Another one they wrote was protesting racism versus risking COVID-19. I wouldn't weigh these crises separately.
Oh, my gosh.
In the event of a pandemic, the World Health Organization believes that public protests are important. These are some things that they were promoting on your part of your dime.
I remember that because there was, I don't remember the individual in the Biden administration that was asked about, well, wait, you're telling everybody to stay home, keep their distance, wear their mask, and all that kind of stuff. And she made some statement. I remember reading it on the program when this occurred because there was a bunch of protests planned, which are thought to be spreader events, right? And you see all these people out in the street, many of whom without masks, and they're shoulder to shoulder, but they're protesting. This was in the wake of the George Floyd situation. And she basically excused it. She said, well, it's okay because that's a higher priority now.
Yeah.
And so they were sanctioning and advocating for these protests. So it was a hypocritical message and a double standard for sure.
There was the infamous Hunter Biden incident where they put out basically a notice saying, why haven't, and I'm reading it right here, why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post Hunter Biden story? We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. So I think a lot of that was self-inflicted.
No doubt.
And a lot of it was from the NPR side of things, which does tend to be very left-leaning. But all they had to do was just call it right down the middle.
Yep.
They couldn't do that. They went overboard with it. They hire this CEO, Catherine Mayer, who had never been a journalist at any position, no management, anything like that, who was left of linen to be their CEO and their public face.
Yep.
I remember Gerard, when Mitt Romney came out and said, now Mitt Romney, of all people, came out and said, we need to look at NPR, PBS, because, and you know what they did? You know what they did? Their answer to that was they authorized the official Big Bird to go on Saturday Night Live and do a monologue on Weekend Update against Mitt Romney.
I remember.
Against Mitt Romney, calling him the crazy person.
I absolutely remember that, and I think most of us on the right would consider Mitt to be, he may be the epitome of what is referred to as a rhino, right? I mean, he certainly doesn't lean heavily into conservative policy, but more importantly, this notion that these organizations are not biased and are not tainted to the left. You of course, illustrated that just in this person they hired to lead it.
If their argument this past couple of weeks, especially this past week, was we're so essential. We are so essential to American discourse that this is a death nail for democracy and all these kind of things. Well, if you're so essential, then earn your keep on your own.
I would agree, and that you got plenty of wealthy elites that currently contribute. They're just going to have to dig a little deeper. You know how all the people on the left say that those of us who pay all the taxes in the country, especially at the upper end of the income scale, you got to pay more. Well, that's what you ought to be telling these elite liberals that support your organizations. We need your help. We need more. So, the problem here, Will, is that we got this $7 trillion budget. And everybody, and I'm not giving a pass to folks on the right either, has a sacred cow. Oh, you can't cut that. Everybody. So I would just ask, what the heck can you cut? That's why it took 3 months to get $9 billion through. 0.13% of the total budget. That's right, 0.13. That's how much it took 3 months to negotiate. Everybody's got a sacred cow. It's got to end, or the $2 trillion deficits will continue. We're stepping aside for a break right now in the Element Wealth studio. It's Kelly Bennett with SuperTalk Mississippi News next.
From the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Whatever happened to a Saturday night when the rest of shop and you felt all right? It don't seem the same since Cosmic Light came into my life. I thought I was divine. I used to go for a ride with a chick could go and listen to the music on the radio. A saxophone was blowing on a rock and roll show.
Okay, so I just had to look. That's Meatloaf?
Yeah.
Where was I? I missed that.
Was that 76?
Oh. Okay.
77? I may be wrong.
Yeah, they were popular. That's my college years. They were popular then. So, all right. We welcome now Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right. What's happening there, Kelly? Let's see. We need some audio there.
I think it might be my fault, but
we're getting it.
I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Can we not hear?
Kelly, we'll dump you. We'll come back to you. Okay.
Okay. She can hear us, but we just can't hear her. So, all right. So we'll figure it out. Let's see here. I'm just watching the business news. Still a lot of controversy about cutting the interest rates. And the Fed governors, you got about half of them that want to cut it, half of them don't. The president, of course, wants a new Fed chairman. But the market signaled, no, Mr. President, don't do that. And so it was rumored that he had drafted a letter calling for his resignation and was going to terminate him if he didn't, but he's backed off on that. It appears the markets just felt like that would be unsettling at a minimum, so just let the thing play out in normal course and get a new Fed chairman in there. But you still got some Fed governors. All right, we good? We got Kelly Bennett, SuperTalk Mississippi News. You there, Kelly?
Good morning, guys. Can you hear me this time?
We got it. Perfect. Awesome. Great.
Here I am.
All right, so is it raining?
Right.
Raining down there?
Believe it or not, it is not raining. We actually got the worst of it on Wednesday night. Now, the National Weather Service did downgrade Invest 93 on Wednesday, citing significantly reduced wind speeds and improved atmospheric conditions. We were waiting for this Invest to come back into the Gulf, and then it could have been real trouble. Thankfully, that never really happened. It stayed on land. However, emergency services remain on standby due to a flooding threat, which is going to last through the weekend. In fact, Harrison County Emergency Management Director Matt Stratton told us what residents in southern Mississippi can expect.
So across the coast, we've had around 3 inches of rain over the last few days, and we're still under the flood watch for the rest of Friday. There could be another inch or so possible, but it's going to be a wave here or there. It's not continuous rainfall.
Now, if you're familiar with these kind of systems, like most of us are on the coast, these feeder bands come down and you'll get heavy rain for a little while and then it'll kind of slack off. And thankfully, at this point, there haven't been any road closings.
No, we are continuing to monitor that, but the heaviest rainfall that we had was back on Wednesday night. Since then, there haven't been any roads affected, but our road crews continue to monitor the situation. And, of course, if anybody does encounter any barricades, be sure to mind those and take another route.
So the hurricane season actually runs through November 30th. I think peak season is August, September, so we're coming up on that. Speaking of flooding concerns, the city of Hattiesburg has begun construction on a major infrastructure project, which is aimed at drainage improvement and lowering flash flood risks. An overhaul in the area of West 7th Street near Highway 49 will cost just under $5 million. $2.1 million comes from the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, another $2.1 million in federal dollars, and $500,000 from local capital funds.
All right, so talk to us about a possible mask mandate for the city of Jackson. Is this related to COVID? I know there was a report yesterday that there's an uptick in COVID cases across the country.
Unfortunately, this is more likely related to an uptick in crime. Jackson Police Chief Joseph Wade. Jackson Police Chief Joseph Wade this week appeared before the city council with a proposal to ban or limit the wearing of ski masks. They have another name for these. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Shiesty masks or what they're called. I don't know. But he cited public safety concerns and an increased challenge in identifying suspected criminals.
And they're doing this for multiple reasons. First of all, to not show who they are. We have the ability to do facial recognition now, and they know this. It's terrifying when you're inside of a business and somebody walks in with a shiesty mask on.
No doubt. I mean, how would you feel if you walked into the bank and there's somebody there in a mask? That's just insane.
Wow.
Now, other cities like Philadelphia, New York City, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. have issued restrictions on mask wearing to bolster public safety, though the latter three eventually repealed or tabled those ordinances. But this is a big concern. The council hasn't held a vote on the proposed ordinance yet, but they're planning to do that in the near future. And while we're talking about crime issues, I found out this week, I didn't know this, the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is also called NIBRS, became the national standard for law enforcement crime data reporting in 2021. It captures detailed data about criminal incidents like demographic information about victims, offenders, the person arrested, the type of weapon used. I mean, it can really help you pinpoint what's going on in your area so that police can better respond and they can line up their equipment to better respond. But Sean Tyndall, the commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, told us we're not compliant. But he's been working to get it.
We're trying to get drivers compliant in our state where we can get better data on the types of crimes that are being committed and who is committing them so that we can concentrate our resources and the amount of resources where and how much that we need to.
That'll be a big help if we can do that. I think they said 60% of police departments in Mississippi aren't reporting.
Wow.
And need to.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so what about this? The big, beautiful bill had a bunch of money in it for the Department of Defense, lots of funding for some new projects. And it appears that Pascagoula may benefit.
It's interesting to see the pieces of the puzzle between federal and state come together, and this is a great example of that. South Mississippi setting itself up to be a major benefactor of increased spending at the Department of Defense. Several dignitaries were on hand for ribbon cutting at Rolls-Royce Naval Propulsion in Pascagoula this week. They've been acquired by Fairbanks Morse Defense. This company specializes in maritime defense products like propellers and motors. They are now the only privately owned U.S. foundry capable of casting large-scale Navy standard propulsion systems. And as we know, $150 million will be invested in national defense through President Trump's budget bill. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity for growth.
Yeah. The Holly Springs Utility Department. What's going on there?
The Mississippi Public Service Commission launched an investigation into the Holly Springs Utility District last year following months of complaints from customers. They say the utility isn't delivering adequate electric service to customers, and I think most customers would agree. They experience frequent outages, and this is happening in the middle of very sunshiny days where it shouldn't be happening. But Northern District Public Service Commissioner Chris Brown told us this week that rumors of some kind of deal are untrue.
No, there's no truth to that. I think the legislature was pretty clear on the path that we needed to take regarding Holly Springs Utility District. And I personally met with the mayor and an alderman, and it never came up that we were trying to negotiate any deal other than finding a solution to the crisis.
I think customers, though, it sounds like they're about to get some relief with the new mayor, Charles Terry, and his new administration because they've been very cooperative.
The third-party group that is doing the evaluation of the operations side, this administration has helped facilitate their work, which is going to help us get to the hearings faster.
I want to tell you about this story because I just saw it. Caleb Sailors from our news team just put this online, and it kind of made me laugh. So it doesn't all have to be serious. The Mud Monsters turning that Kiss Cam scandal into a marketing opportunity, encouraging fans to join them for the game on July 31st for a chance to have an awkward moment on the video board. Bring your wife, your girlfriend, bring your head of HR, bring all three. Come on down to the game. It's going to be fun.
Oh, my gosh. That's great. Kelly, appreciate that. Appreciate the update there. Kelly Bennett, everyone, with SuperTalk Mississippi News. See you next time. Thanks, Kelly.
See you soon.
We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. We got an hour and a half of middays remaining. Stay with us.
For all your... Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
with you in the Element Wealth studio today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar. You'll hear an interview with two-time NBA champion Cliff Levingston, who played on the early Chicago Bulls teams. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there is Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant. Go to SuperiorCatfish.com for more info. Steve had an old friend of mine on the show yesterday, a guy named Clark Ritchie.
Yeah.
From Baldwin, Mississippi. And I'll tell you how I know him, Will, when my son came of age to start playing the so-called travel ball, competitive baseball, and I coached his team. We, on an annual basis in April, would travel to Baldwin to play in a tournament up there. It was a fun little tournament. Usually stay in Tupelo, playing ball. Well, Clark was the director. He was like involved with the USSSA organization, so I got to know him back then. And my son, let's see, he was like 10, 11, so that was over 20 years ago. Great guy. And so now he's involved in making films.
Making films, yeah.
It's really cool. He's a real smart guy. He's just a great, as is Steve, of course, ambassador for the state of Mississippi, and is a history buff about the state of Mississippi in so many subject matter areas. So I caught that interview. I was doing a little work here in the studio. We had it on, and fantastic interview hearing him talk about that. So that's the kind of stuff you get on Steve's show. They get
you never know.
Stuff.
I mean, well, you got a guy from Baldwin who's a filmmaker one day, and then the next day you got a two-time NBA champion who played with Jordan.
Isn't that awesome?
I mean, pretty incredible.
Yeah. Jordan's quote. He's got many. You know, Jordan was brilliant and didn't, I don't think, aspire to be one, but was almost philosophical in nature. And there's a quote that I use in my speaking engagements a lot, especially when I'm addressing young people. And he says, a loss is not a failure until it becomes an excuse. That's brilliant.
Pretty good.
That's something that Michael Jordan himself said.
Yeah.
He said, you know, losses can be instructive. Nobody wants to lose. You don't go out and try to lose. But don't consider it a failure until it becomes an excuse. And I think in our society, we always look to point fingers. It wasn't my fault. You know, somebody else's. Everything bad that happens. And our government has conditioned us to that to a great extent. It's not you. No, it's the mean old guy over there, right? So... but maybe my favorite all-time Jordan quote there.
I love Michael Jordan.
He's awesome, man.
I was of the age when they were. I remember the last when their first three-peat. I remember that last championship, and I remember he went away, and we used to get WGN. Remember WGN, the channel?
Yeah, sure. Chicago.
We would get that on. I always tell the story. We had this illegal satellite, you know, big things.
Yeah,
still on my mom's roof to this day, in fact. And we could get these channels from all over. So we got WGN, I remember, and I'd watch Chicago Cub games.
Yeah,
and then watching Jordan, and I was of the age where I was starting to get in basketball a little bit, and I became a huge Chicago Bulls fan. And when he came back, and he had Rodman and, you know, of course, Pippen, I watched every game. I watched every game they aired on TV, and I was the biggest Michael Jordan fan in the world. And I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance, the documentary. It's worth a watch about Jordan's career, really, and about the end of it. It's amazing. Those guys are so good, and they were so entertaining. Emphasis on the word entertaining because NBA ratings have just plummeted.
Yeah.
Those teams back then, it wasn't just the Bulls. It was, you know, Malone and Stockton and Ewing in New York and David Robinson in San Antonio. Those guys are so entertaining and so much fun to watch. I wish the NBA would go back to that. I don't think it ever will, but they competed every single moment.
Yeah.
It's not like now where you do
load management half the time.
You do load management. Well, you know, we want this guy playing all, 82 games, so we're going to sit him out, 30% of them or something like that.
Well, great teams, of course. You're right. Very entertaining and just an incredible dynasty that they had there.
And the remember the Dream Team?
Yeah.
Dream Team was the greatest collection of humans to do one endeavor ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
It's amazing.
When they allowed them to compete. That was really something.
Yeah, I don't think they came within.
Changing.
I don't think a team came within 40 points of them.
And shouldn't. But before then, we would not do very well. So
yeah, we struck because it was all college players, right?
Yeah. Relative to the professionals that took the court from the other countries competing. So pretty neat. On the C Spire text line, we were talking earlier about the president's medical condition, dealing with the veins and his lower extremities and his legs, the bottom part of his legs. Gerard should interview Dr. Michael Manning, the foremost expert in Mississippi on venous insufficiency at the Vein Institute. Yeah, I think his name of his organization, if I'm not mistaken, is the Mississippi Vein Institute. I'm sure he would be happy to come on or do something by phone. I know Dr. Manning. He lives in my neighborhood, and he is thinks like we do. He's very conservative in his viewpoints and somewhat involved, kind of in the background in politics. But, yeah, he's great. And you're right. He has a great organization, focuses on men's health and veins. Mississippi Vein Institute. Got a great staff as well. So let's see. Shine on, you crazy diamond is the bomb, says Ricky in Aberdeen. The Pink Floyd tune. We were talking about that earlier. Yeah. Will was playing the Pink Floyd. I agree. Pink Floyd was ahead of everyone and everything at that time, says George in Biloxi. I agree. Very innovative. Are y'all covering any widespread panic or Grateful Dead hot sauce? We really haven't talked about that too much, but certainly, yeah, those are all very popular groups.
I'm kind of into the Grateful Dead, not as deep as a lot of other people.
Not like a deadhead, huh?
I'm not a deadhead, but I like some of their more mainstream stuff. I've never gotten into Panic. I've seen them in concert. I've seen them in concert like 3 times. It's just, it ain't my cup of tea.
Yeah, me either. Serious groupies, though. No doubt about
man,
that.
I've got friends of mine that they travel around. They see them all the time. Same thing with like Dave Matthews Band. I saw. That's the worst concert I've ever been to.
Yeah, I don't really enjoy his music either.
He played like in a buddy of mine went to see him in South Haven. We were there for an hour. He played 2 songs, and I didn't know what they were. Everybody else was having a great time. Me and him were like, "Let's get out of here. This is terrible."
Many have had a similar, this is on the C Spire text line, Dustin from Walnut. Many have had a similar argument about technology and the AT&T divestiture. Yeah, the difference is, though, Dustin, this is something I actually know quite a bit about, being in the IT industry and specifically in the IT infrastructure industry, is that they have a monopoly. So it's a regulated utility, if you will, with a monopoly. In some of what they provide. Not everything, but some. So that's where it rises to a little bit different level. Google doesn't. I mean, there's nothing physically that precludes any other company from challenging Google. And what bothers me about that whole deal is that there's so many other things you could point to and say, if you want to talk about someone who just dominates a market, that would be a prospect for, I wouldn't even call it antitrust, but for a breakup using the basis that the DOJ is. And just seeing how that played out through the decades in the technology industry, one thing that I've learned that was a big deal, just dealing with so many large companies, is you don't want all those different platforms in there. It's a nightmare to manage a single set of corporate standards and that you expect your users, the staff and so forth, to adhere to. Now, that certainly has taken a life of its own because of the advent of the internet, and so much of what is consumed is done so through cloud delivery. But there's value in that, and you don't want. I mean, you think about writing software, and it's not as big a problem today as it was back when the software had to integrate directly with the operating system. We don't need 4 different operating systems. That's a nightmare. And honestly, that impedes innovation because the innovators, the architects, the developers, they got to write their code to make sure it's compatible across all those platforms. And then they got to maintain it and support it Getting a little bit into the technical weeds there, but you could almost argue the same is true with respect to Google. I mean, like, how are we going to benefit if they break up? I don't think we are. I think this is just the DOJ just looking for a target, honestly. And I agree with Chip in his efforts, his advocacy efforts to prevent that from happening. I think it's a bad thing. I think we're better off for what Google does, honestly. There's plenty of options if you don't like that. We're stepping aside for a break, coming right back once again in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Up of Mississippi. Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
We're back in the Element Wealth studio. Don't forget that the Mississippi Municipal League will be conducting its conference next week on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And the Ricky Matthews Show and Middays are going to be at the Mississippi Municipal League's annual conference at the Coliseum in Biloxi. That's going to be next Tuesday. This event brings city and county leaders from across the state together as they look to the future of the Magnolia State. So we're looking forward to that. Always a good conference, well attended.
And that event is sponsored by the Mississippi Gulf Coast Coliseum and Convention Center.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Yep, and appreciate their sponsorship.
A lot of new mayors.
Yeah, and I bet we'll have some of them on the show.
Yeah.
So it ought to be fun. Ought to be a good event. Always is. There, beautiful view. That's one of my favorite remotes there. That, of course, and cruising the coast because of the view we have right there of the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast and the Gulf of America from inside the Coliseum there through the glass, and then, of course, out at the Biloxi Green for cruising the coast. Tim and McGee says if everyone dies that the left says over all the Republican legislation being passed, hell, there won't be but 10 people left in the country. I think you're right there, Tim. The hyperbole is ridiculous. It really is. And again, I just point out, Will, it's not that people on the right, such as myself, object to the delivery and the availability of some of these services to people. It's just, should the government be paying for it?
Well, can I read you something that Chip Roy said?
Yeah.
Congressman Chip Roy, when all this was going on, he said this, I believe, yesterday. Quote, when the floods were hitting the people that I represent in Texas, it took NPR through Texas Public Radio 19 hours to post anything about the flooding on its social media. What NPR and Texas Public Radio were doing in the interim, they were playing a program, a D.C.-based program, lobbying Congress for billions of dollars to continue their funding.
Of course they were.
Instead, private stations in the communities in which I live, him being Chip Roy, were there for the people of Texas. They were representing the information that was necessary, and the public stations were completely MIA.
Of course. No doubt about it. So I came across a great piece that really dug extensively into this notion that Medicaid expansion, specifically part of the Affordable Care Act, so-called Obamacare, saved 100,000 people. They're basically saying that actually, not 100,000 people. They're saying that the reforms in the Big Beautiful Bill package will kill 100,000 people. And there are protesters around the Capitol that are stacking up what are kind of mock half coffins that say, "This coffin represents policy murder." That's what the sign says on the coffin, this mock coffin. This was in a June 9th Washington Post column penned by Yale law professor Natasha Sarin. That's what she says. "This isn't hyperbolic," Sarin added. "It's fact." She has a Ph.D. in economics as well as a Harvard law degree, served in the Treasury Department under Biden. No, it is hyperbole. It's not fact. And so this analysis I read really got into the details of, okay, we expanded Obamacare in 2010 with Medicaid expansion. Expanded a Medicaid through Obamacare. Pardon me, I got that reversed. And they went into the details of this notion that 100,000 lives were potentially saved, and it's just impossible to come up with that. Now, there was a study done that said about 27,400 lives were saved between 2010 and 2022, and it's like, where did they come up with this number? They're just doing a bunch of crazy statistics. Now, I would submit that there's certainly value to health care. I'm not arguing that at all, but if they were really concerned about saving lives and improving the quality of the health of people in this country, which is not good, honestly, and here in Mississippi, we're the least healthy state. Well, a lot of that has to do with lifestyle choices, bad lifestyle choices. You want to be healthier, you want to live longer lives. Quit putting all that crap in your body, man. That's more, and then you don't need so much medical treatment care. I know everything ain't perfect. A lot of that's just based on your genes. You just drew an unlucky straw. I get it, and there's health care for that. But man, we could start by stop complaining about government programs or the lack of government funding or restrictions on qualifying for these benefits, and get off the couch and go walk and quit eating all the crap you do and quit smoking and all that kind of junk. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News in the Element Wealth studio.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year. I hope she home.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this Friday, y'all. Will Easton for the vacationing rhino. So yesterday, Will, we had shall we say, a lively and robust discussion with House Minority Leader Robert Johnson. Really appreciate him coming in the studio, and I think he told me this offline. Sometimes, I forget conversations we have on the air and then between the breaks. But he said something about, I have never been invited to stay that long before. I kept him for 3 segments. And I made it clear. I said, man, you come anytime you want. And we welcome his points of view. We may not agree with him, but, he could come in and share those. And I thought we had a good discussion. We had him for 3 segments. And I, of course, like I always do with a guest, I always clear it with them, make sure they're good to go. But we got into a discussion that was a little surprising, at least his position, on the possible consolidation of school districts in the state of Mississippi as a means to perhaps save some money, cut some expenses. We've got, 140 school districts, I believe, in the state, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I think that's too many, and I think there are lots of opportunities for consolidation. I do think it needs to be done on a thoughtful and basis and in a methodical approach. I absolutely believe that, but I was a little surprised to find that he supported that idea. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, how come we can't get this done then? Because you would expect that you'd have some Democrat opposition, but he certainly didn't indicate that. And so I sort of suggested to him, well, I'm going to put you and the speaker together because I know the speaker has the goal of achieving that as well. And I think we've got perhaps as much, if not more, pushback, honestly, from Republicans that are just getting just beat up and inundated with the positions expressed, and I'm being nice about that, from the school administrators and superintendents in their districts that, of course, don't want to see anything happen and anything disrupt their districts, don't want to see any sort of consolidation because the goal there would be, of course, to consolidate and eliminate where possible duplicate resources and assets. So while we were having that discussion, and this is where I'm going, just recapping that, Senator John Polk, of course, from the Hattiesburg area, a regular listener, sent me a text. He said that one thing to keep in mind is that many people don't understand the difference between school district consolidation and school consolidation. And that was a good point. He's probably right, and I'm sure he's heard that as a member of the Mississippi State Senate. But he pointed that out, and I just want to share that. And honestly, I had never thought about that before. I don't think I've ever addressed it. I felt like everybody understood when we're talking about district consolidation that doesn't necessarily entail or point to specific school combinations, but that may make sense as well, honestly, if you've got some really, really small schools, because the issue here, just like in business, you got a certain amount of fixed overhead, whether you have one school or 100. There's just a certain amount of overhead, administrative costs that are involved there just to operate a district, and you do achieve some economies of scale. And he pointed out, for example, did Senator Polk to me yesterday, that the Gwinnett County in Georgia, over near Atlanta, that the school district there has 180,000 students. He said that's almost half as many as we have in the entire state. I know another one that gets referenced a lot is the city of Houston, Texas, public school district, which is gigantic. I don't know what its student population. I looked it up a while ago and shared it on the show, but I want to say it's close to the size of the entire state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Now, understand their district headquarters and their back office is not the size of one would be, for example, of a small district in Mississippi. I mean, you still got a whole lot more schools and a lot more to manage and administer there, but there still are opportunities for economies of scale. No doubt about it. But I just want to pass that on, and I appreciate Senator Polk for pointing that out, that there are a lot of people in Mississippi that sort of conflate the two, district consolidation with school consolidation. I think both, honestly, should be on the table for investigation and just for exploration as to any possible consolidation opportunities there. And I was talking earlier about this Medicaid situation and just looking through this unbelievable statistical detail by these left-leaning policy advocates that just can manipulate these statistics to be any way you want. I personally believe all this stuff is hyperbole. And again, nobody's getting kicked off of Medicaid unless you're not eligible. It's just simple as that. And asking people in this able-bodied coverage group to meet some pretty easily met work requirements. You work part-time. Essentially, part-time would be 20 hours a week. That would get you eligible, as well as providing some sort of community service or being a student, being a caretaker. I mean, I don't think those hoops are too big to jump through in order to receive free health care coverage. I think that's a reasonable request on the part of the taxpayers. So any estimates about people losing their coverage, well, that's because they don't qualify. And then having to show up and send some paperwork in and at least attest and confirm twice a year that you still meet the income eligibility requirements. Or if you're a disabled person, for example, and you're eligible because of your disability, you could be cured and no longer have the disability.
The key word, reasonable.
Yeah, that's reasonable. How could you say that's not reasonable? So I disagree with the folks on the left there that are just really trying to promote to the hilt this notion that all these people are going to be kicked off, they're going to die in the streets and all that kind of stuff. Like our friend Timmy McGee said, there ain't going to be nobody left in the country if everybody dies that they're predicting. And that's not being insensitive. It's just being reasonable.
Well, the hyperbole by these people sometimes. I mean, yeah, they say people are dying in the streets.
It's just not true, and that doesn't happen here. It's if it is, it's I don't want to say it's of their own choosing, but it's not because resources aren't available to them to avoid death. In that case, it's one of the challenges, one of the problems we have to deal with is that people do get sick and they need expensive treatment. They're going to get treated in this country, whether they can pay or not. The question is, how do we pay for that? How do we build that, bake that into the model? And it's a tough one. And while we're talking about health care, there's some predictions out there that the cost of insurance is expected to rise rather sharply last year, both in the commercial market and also in particular the commercial market where in the commercial market these commercial carriers sell their coverage through the Obamacare marketplaces, the exchanges, in order to increase their rates. Of course, in this country, in the states, insurance is regulated at the state level, and increasing rates in the Obamacare exchanges actually requires a request to do so, and numerous states have carriers that are asking for significant increases. I'm looking like Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois is asking for a 26% increase in the premiums, in the coverage they sell in the exchanges. Now, keep in mind that for the most part, the taxpayers pay for that coverage. It's not totally free like Medicaid is. Mm-hmm. The subscriber, the enrollee that purchases that coverage based on their income is required to pay a certain percentage, a designated percentage of their income based on their income within certain ranges. It's a stepped-up sort of progressive system, and the taxpayer pays the rest of it. So it goes up 26%. In Illinois, for example, someone at the lower end of the income scale only has to pick up 2% of that 26%. The taxpayers pick up 98% of it, if you follow the math there. So it just means our cost and our spending is going to keep on going up in the federal government. That's a little Sawyer Brown. That's one of the tunes the house band is going to play. We practiced it yesterday a few times. I got to tell you what I had to do after playing it on the drums about 3 times in a row.
It's a George Jones song, isn't it?
Sawyer Brown.
The race is on. I think that's an old George Jones song.
They copied it? They covered it?
I think they covered it.
All right. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
The winner loses all. The winner loses all.
You hear that?
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
I feel tears welling up cold and deep inside, like my heart's full of big break. And a stab of loneliness, sharp and painful, that I may never shake. You might say that I was taking it hard since you wrote me off with a call. But don't you wager that I'll hide in sorrow when I may lay right down and fall. Now the race is on and here comes pride in the backstretch. Heartaches going to the inside. My tears are holding back there. I'm trying not to fall. My heart's out of the running. True love scratch for another's sake. race is on and it looks like heartaches, and the winner loses all.
So,
yeah,
I kick. It's pretty fast, obviously. So I to kind of get the cadence going, I kick us off because it just jumps right into it, and so you got to have some way to signal to everybody. So I kick it off, on the sticks, and I do what I think is the correct speed, and like that. Uh-huh. We kick it off, and we're doing well. But then it felt like about through the middle of the song or so, we get a little slow. And so at the end, they said, I don't think we played that at the right speed in the back half. So I said, okay, I'm going to start us out even a little faster. You kick it off. And if you notice right there at the beginning, it's the bass drums, boom, 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 along with the bass there. And so we played it 3 times in a row. And honestly, besides the first time, the final 2 times, I thought to perfection. Really played it well. But I had to take a rest. I had to get up off the seat and walk around to stretch my hip flexor out from banging that bass drum. Man, it was taxing.
I told Gerard that Sawyer Brown was the very first cassette tape that I ever owned. My mom, I remember going to the whatever the store in the mall at Barnes Crossing in Tupelo was, where they sold cassettes. We didn't have CD player, obviously. Yeah. It was cassette era, early 90s, and I picked out Sawyer Brown, and it was the Dirt Road. It was the album that had Some Girls Do, which was a huge hit for them. And I don't know if they ever did anything after that, but man, I love that band. That was one of my favorite bands, and they were a little bit more rocking. They were from Florida. And they're a little bit more rocking than your average country band.
I would agree.
I mean, you could hear it in that song we just played, The Race Is On.
Yeah.
Which was originally done by George Jones way back when, and they redid it. And it's between the drums and the guitar and all that kind of stuff, a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more rocking than most other country bands at the time.
I would agree. It's the voice and the accent that makes it kind of a country song, because other than that, that's kind of more consistent with rock music, the way it's arranged, and the instruments used. Let's see, on the C Spire text line, where do I sign up for 20 hours a week, talking about the work requirement for Medicaid and food stamps, SNAP. 20 hours a week, essentially part-time, half-time, if you will. I don't know. I haven't been around the job market in a while, how many so-called part-time jobs there are available out there if one wanted one. And I certainly acknowledge that, and I do think there's some provisions in the bill that relate to this issue as well, that there just may not be any jobs available. So there you can get some sort of waiver, if you're diligently looking for work. But you can just see that it requires lots of resources to verify all that. That's not something that's easy to verify and confirm, and there's all kinds of things an individual could do to, I guess, scam the system in that respect. So this is reasonable stuff. On the C Spire text line, it would be nice if Blue Cross Blue Shield and other health insurance providers were allowed to do interstate commerce instead of intrastate commerce. I hear you, and I've actually researched that topic quite a bit, and the reality is it wouldn't matter. And here's why. The state of Georgia a few years ago, after Obamacare, they actually changed their regulatory standards to allow any insurance company that was approved in a bunch of different states that they felt like was equal to or exceeded Georgia's insurance regulations could sell policies in Georgia. 0 showed up to do it. You know why? Because unless you can establish a provider network, nobody wants your insurance. Nobody wants to go to the doctor, even though their services may be covered. What people want to do is walk out of the doctor's office and pay some small copay or deductible and then have the provider file the claim with the carrier, and they handle it between themselves, rather than you having to pay out of pocket and then send the paperwork in and wait 3 months to get paid, if you're lucky, and then deal with all the squabbling. So the issue that makes this hard, this so-called selling insurance across state lines, is the provider network. And what providers don't want is 100 different insurance companies they got to deal with. What they really want is one, for simplicity and efficiency. You can cost associated with that. It's hard enough to deal with 3 or 4 like most of them do, because almost all of them are going to be Medicare and 2 or 3 other commercial carriers that have a sizable network in their particular state. So it's kind of a ruse to think, oh yeah, that would open up all this competition. No, there's nothing preventing them from coming in now. By the way, there's nothing preventing Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana could come into Mississippi and start selling coverage today, as long as the Department of Insurance approves them, and they would. But then they would have to go build their network. They'd have to go get doctors to say, hey, will you take our coverage? And you know what the doctors are going to say? Well, why do I need yours? Nobody has your insurance.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? When we already have.
It's so complicated.
And so I know. And
my wife had a dental thing a couple months ago, and it was a simple procedure. It wasn't anything crazy. But the hours that she had to spend from dealing with the doctor and then dealing with the insurance. This is a dental claim now.
Right.
Which I'm sure is a little bit more simple than a medical claim. It just crazy. She had to argue with them on this. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's necessary. Back and forth, back. It's like
it is.
Surely somebody can come up with something better.
Well, and the reason is because you've got a third party between the consumer of the services and the provider of the services. And I don't know how to fix that unless we just all went to a cash basis, in which case a bunch of people would be bankrupt. And it's no different than in the case of your automobile insurance. Except, most of the time you're not filing claims on your homeowner's insurance, your automobile.
Knock on wood, less likely to happen. And as you get older, you're going to,
then you're using it more.
You're using it more.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. So, and you got all kinds of regulations at the federal and the state level. Not that you don't have insurance regulations over other forms of insurance as well, but not to the extent as complicated as health insurance. And so even if you think about if you had a crash in your car and you had to go file a claim as a result of that, I mean, you're going to have, generally speaking, one body shop, one vendor that's going to deal with that. But with respect to health insurance, is like you say, as you get older, you may have a dozen different providers.
And the human body is a lot more complicated than Silverado.
It's not like a turnkey single point of contact, one source dealing with it from start to finish. It doesn't work that way, and it's a whole lot more frequent. Thomas in Greenwood says, didn't a lot of businesses switch to all part-time help to avoid having to provide health care? Seems like most entry-level jobs are part-time now. No, the answer is no, Thomas, because it's based on full-time equivalence. And also keep in mind that the Obamacare requirements are for any organization that has 50 full-time equivalents on staff is required to provide what's described as affordable minimum essential coverage. Affordable defined as just under 9% of the wages, the gross wages paid to an employee. So if the company doesn't provide that coverage that is affordable based on that calculation, then the employee has the right to go buy subsidized coverage in the exchanges, and the employer has to pay a penalty. That's how crazy complicated it is. I've yet to find an employer yet, by the way, in 15 years since this law has been in effect, that's ever paid the penalty. I've yet to find one. Most don't even know there is such a thing. Now, when they first went online, all the HR people and the lawyers were all working behind the scenes to figure out and then going through their employee roles to make sure. But honestly, we're so past that, it's not even a thing. And like I said, most people today don't even know the little rules I just described. Most people don't know even exist.
Crazy.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook State, Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you, a little Pink Floyd. It's Pink Floyd Day.
So you've woken up to this song many times.
Oh, man. That opening part that at some point kind of builds up. Yeah. Then it's all the clocks going off, all the alarms. I'm like, oh, my gosh. Go to class. That's what my neighbor would say. Oh, man. So, I was just looking up the penalty for the employer responsibilities, what it's called under the Affordable Care Act. That's when an employer with more than 50 full-time equivalents does not provide the minimum affordable coverage to their employees. It's now $2,900 per employee that doesn't meet the standard, meet the test there. You got to have 50 full-time equivalents. That's the way it works. 29. It started out as 2,000 when the law was passed. So it's up by nearly 50%, pardon me, since then, from 2,000 to just under $3,000. And again, I can't find a lot of information about employers who are actually paying the penalties that, don't pass the test, the affordability test there. Interesting. Mo says, but Gerard, there is no reasonable test for a party that thinks it is a burden to show ID at the polls. That's so true, Mose. I would say it's kind of hard to implement reasonable tests for a party that believes men can get pregnant. It's kind of hard to get congruence on more meaty issues that dig into things like healthcare policy and economics and taxes and stuff like that, when you can't agree that there are only two biological sexes and that men can't get pregnant. I would say that makes it kind of difficult. Casey on the C Spire text line, I believe still a member of the board in the Ocean Springs School District, says, let's see, I'm going to go back a little bit. Would need to limit the number of administrators that school districts are consolidated. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly do that. I don't know, Casey, if I'm in favor of the state dictating that. I get a little concerned about the state kind of meddling and inserting themselves too much into district affairs, but it's not a bad idea. Also, administrators will want to increase their administrators' pay because of the increased responsibility. I absolutely agree with that, and I think that's reasonable if you're going to take on more responsibility. So, and that's why I've always said, somebody's got to do some research, some analysis, some modeling here. Just having experienced this, in business consolidation and integration, it's just a mistake to think, oh, yeah, we can just bring those in and we can just eliminate all these people in that organization that are doing these jobs and transfer all their workload to the people in the platform. It usually doesn't work that way. You do achieve some savings, there's no doubt. But to just assume that it's just half or double, you know what I'm saying, that everybody can go, no, it doesn't work that way. Not quite. Because you're making a bigger organization and there's more responsibility. There are more functions, more tasks, no doubt. But you certainly can cut some duplicative cost. If you couldn't, then there would be no sense in doing so. There was an era back in the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, where we saw this just massive banking consolidation, just of banks, which largely involved, because many of them were our customers, they used to say, yeah, this is more about just merging computer systems than it is anything else, because banks are just big computers at the end of the day. I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but the core of a bank is those functions are highly automated, which is a good thing. And this was before we had all these mobile tools that do, if you think about it, are able to perform a lot of the functions and provide the services, self-service, if you will, that you used to have to go physically to the bank for. And that's a good thing. It's because that cuts everybody's costs, and it's also just a lot better experience to have instant access to all that information and all your banking accounts and be able to transact without having the need to involve bank employees, bank staff, assist you with that, bankers as they call them. And Casey goes on to say, I'm okay with school consolidation as long as it will save resources so that we can pay teachers more. In my opinion, we could do with fewer administrators. And I think you're right, Casey, that's a common argument. Okay, let's get more into the classroom, more money to the people that are actually teaching our kids as opposed to the back office administration. So costs could be certainly cut through consolidation, but maybe some of those costs, there needs to be some approach such that some of those costs are used to reduce spending, certainly stop the trajectory or reduce the trajectory of spending increases. That's actually more likely what the case would be than just saying, oh, yeah, we can just cut all the spending. I think you're looking at just slowing down the increase is what it would be more likely. And I think that's the same case with economies of scale with we were talking about with Haley Pisackerly a couple of weeks ago with respect to more electricity generation. The cost is going to continue to rise just like everything else does, but you're leveling it off more. It's not as steep. I agree with you, Casey. I think it ought to be a combination of some of those savings flowing to the bottom line. That would be less spending on the part of the state, or certainly, again, mitigating the increase over time, and the rest going to teachers, because that's never ends, especially when you're competing in the field, as we are with the neighboring states, for teacher talent. And they're busy, active, increasing their pay. That makes us less attractive to recruit these teachers into our schools. So, but I think there's a way to do it, again, like you're suggesting, Casey, methodically and thoughtfully, not just willy-nilly, just cut this, cut that, X here, X there. But I think we could do some good there with some consolidation. Does the minimum number of 50 employees mean 50 employees total or 50 employees participate in the program? No, it's 50 full-time employees. So if let's just say that if you have 2 employees working half-time, part-time, you essentially have 1 full-time equivalent. It's what's called FTE, full-time equivalent. That's the way it's calculated. So it's total number of employees, not total number in the program is the way it worked. And there's kind of a decision tree that I've seen used that HR departments use in employers to see if it applies to them. And, it's, do you have at least 50 full-time equivalent employees, yes or no, in the previous year? So if it's no, then the penalties don't apply. And if it's yes, and then it's, do you offer health insurance coverage to at least 95% of your full-time workers? So you may not offer the coverage, for example, to part-time help. It's just not a benefit. Because if you do, you see you got to make it affordable. And that means you got to pay more for it as an employer. And the employer is penalized if just one of those employees goes to the exchange and buys subsidized coverage if they're eligible for it because they couldn't get a so-called affordable coverage from you, the employer. Then you're paying a penalty of $2,970. And it even gets more complicated. Well, it's based on the number of months that they had the coverage in the year.
Gerard, my head, as my granddad might say, more complicated than a box full of brim hooks.
Incredible.
Okay?
Most people, this is on C-Spire text line, most people who have insurance, dental, or health never look at their policies until they need it. And I've been in the dental business for over 25 years, and it's amazing how many people never look at an explanation of benefits, which will tell them that they paid what they paid the dentist, what was paid by the plan, what they pay. They would drop their teeth if they looked at that professional's right off the bottom line. Insurance is unbelievable nowadays, which is why everything's so expensive. Yeah, I hear you, and I think most people would agree. Will, and this is a person that says they've been in the dental business 25 years. You get all these explanation of benefits, and you get all these bills, and you get some documents that say this is not a bill, then the next one says this is a bill. It is crazy, brutally complicated. And
you get a random one for like $28.
Yeah.
It's like... What?
6 months after you had the
6 months after. I'm like, do I pay it? I mean, what do I
know. It's crazy. I had a situation, it's been 25 years ago. I went to buy a car, and I was financing it, and they ran my credit report, and it had like a $30 or something collection on it from some health care provider. Like, I don't have any reason not to pay the $30. Well, we can't finance the car until you clean that up. I'm serious. Final segment's next.
For all your glass.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk Mississippi.
The great Steely Dan. We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We thank you for joining us. Final segment of what has been a very busy week. So a couple of things I want to pass on to you. Didn't really get to today. A bunch of stuff we didn't get to, and that's fine. We, sometimes the conversation just takes a turn in a certain direction.
It's fine. Better than the opposite when you have totally too much time and not enough to talk about, Gerard.
You've got that right, man. No doubt about that. But update on this Epstein situation. I guess a couple of big news items. The first is that the Wall Street Journal published an article.
Yeah.
This is really something that said that on Epstein's 50th birthday, of course, his girlfriend then, Ghislaine Maxwell, was looking for a gift to mark the occasion, and so she asked a bunch of Epstein's family and friends to write letters. One of those was Donald Trump. And she says she collected letters from Trump and several others of Epstein's associates. This was in 2003. And created an album. And it was a leather-bound album. The Wall Street Journal published this. The president says he didn't do it. Now, he did have a relationship with Epstein. The letter, by the way, it's kind of was in the shape of a naked woman. I don't know if you saw a typewritten frame and then a bunch of stuff written on the inside of it. But at the conclusion, I'm not going to go through that. The final message was ostensibly, allegedly, from the president here. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. The president says he didn't do it, and he's threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal over this.
Yeah.
And the Wall Street Journal generally has been friendly to the president. Of course, has an association with Fox News as well. So, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the other thing is he requested that Attorney General Pam Bondi get a release of the grand jury documents in the Epstein case. Now, interestingly enough, this morning on the way to the studio, I received a call from my good friend and longtime employment lawyer, Pepper Crutcher. He's been on the show before with Balch and Bingham. So he called to kind of unravel and inform me, enlighten me, educate me a little bit on all these documents and stuff. But what he told me that I didn't realize is grand jury documents are locked up. They're sequestered. They're confidential, and there's agreements over my head, honestly. And Pepper can easily get there because he's brilliant. But one of the things he said was that, okay, well, she can't just order the release. She's got to request the court, even the attorney general. Okay, so the court would have to agree to release them. He bets that they won't, and doesn't believe, as many do, that there's some sort of list that we'd get out of that. You've also seen Alan Dershowitz, because he was involved in the proceedings. He says he's seen whatever these documents are as part of the grand jury. So I don't know where all that's going, but that's kind of the news related to the whole Epstein thing, is that first this body letter, as it is called, allegedly produced by the president, sent to Epstein in 2003 to be part of a birthday present. He says he didn't do it. The Wall Street Journal reported that he did, and so he's threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal. Interesting stuff, man. Wow.
Well, the Democrats are using this as a talking point to attack the president, of course.
Yeah.
Joe Scarborough had on, what's the guy with the crazy hair, the representative? I can't remember his name. Anyway, he had him on, I have to look up his name, had him on yesterday, and Scarborough had a great point, because this representative just kept going on and on about Epstein, about how, terrible it was, and Trump, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And finally, Scarborough says, wait a minute, if it was so, perilous, if it was so important, why didn't you guys investigate it when you had both chambers of Congress?
Totally true. Now you're not talking about the female.
No, the
DeLauro is the female.
He had cancer recently. I
can't
remember.
Not Schiff.
Starts with an R.
Raskin.
Yep.
Jamie Raskin. Yep.
And Raskin's like, oh, well,
No. They're crawfishing all over there. They don't know what to say. I know. Oh, my gosh. But I don't know what's going to happen with all this, but the story continues to I guess, just unfold. Larry in Mize, before we go, says, it ain't hard. One county, one administration. It's more complicated than that, though, Larry. Right here in Madison County, you talk about putting Canton and Madison together. Whew, that ain't good, man. Same situation, Hines and Clinton. That ain't good. But we're out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Back with you again Monday. Have a great weekend. Until then, stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.